Joining us now is Dr. Emma Shortis, Senior Researcher for International and Security Affairs at the Australian Institute. Dr. Shortis joins us live from Melbourne. Thank you very much for joining us, first of all. Can I start by asking you to clear something up for us? Why is the case, which is ongoing right now, as I understand it, being heard in Saipan and not, in Hawaii, continental US? Because Belmarsh, to the US is pretty much a short Atlantic hop, isn't it?
That's right. Look, I think there are a number of reasons for this case being held in the Mariana Islands. One is logistical, in that it is close to Australia. So once this is resolved, Julian Assange will be able to return home. But it's also because Assange has, I think, quite evidence-based fears of being on US soil and what that might mean for his ongoing freedom. So I think this arrangement was part of a quite detailed plea deal that would allow, I think, both parties to get what they needed out of these arrangements.
Dr. Shortis, assuming the district court judge signs off on the deal, is it clear what Julian Assange will be doing once he returns home to Australia? A free man?
Look, I think, this saga has gone on for so long for Julian Assange. He's been confined in one way or another for 14 years. And so immediately, I think the focus will be on rest and recovery. This whole saga has taken an incredible toll on Julian Assange, both mentally and physically. So his recovery, I think, will be the first priority.
Can I ask you how Australians feel in general about the whole case and the whole saga?
Certainly, I think there's a big sense of relief and joy in Australia. Whatever Australians think of Julian Assange, the overwhelming consensus is that this has gone on for too long and that he has been punished enough. And also, I think that Australia's most important security ally in the United States really should not have been pursuing an Australian citizen in this way. So I think Assange's return to Australia will be greeted really overwhelmingly with joy and relief.
We don't have all the details of the plea deal at the moment, but as we understand it and based on what we know, he's free, really a free man, and the DOJ cannot go after him anymore.
That's certainly my understanding. As you mentioned, we don't know all of the details, and I think supporters of Julian Assange's freedom are being appropriately circumspect, just given how relentlessly the United States Department of Justice has pursued Julian Assange for such a long time. I think it's not over until it's over. But it does appear, I think, for supporters of Julian Assange's case, I think there's a lot of hope that this will be resolved. Though certainly the campaign has been talking about seeking a presidential pardon for Julian Assange in the future. So it will be interesting to watch that plays out.
Dr. Shortis, the case does raise, some questions about how journalists can cover military intelligence and diplomatic issues, which officials declare as secret. And as I understand it, prior to Julian Assange, no one has ever, been charged under the Espionage Act or found guilty under the Espionage Act for a journalistic act. So I'm wondering about the implications of this particular case, because in essence, that plea deal means he's guilty of a crime, isn't it?
Look, that's right. And I think that's always been the concern about this case, that this indictment unsealed by the Trump administration was an unprecedented use of the 1917 Espionage Act that would criminalise journalistic activity and would set an extraordinary precedent where the United States could go after non-citizens under that act while simultaneously denying them the protections of US law, particularly First Amendment protections. So there are concerns, I think, that Julian Assange has pled guilty to one misdemeanor under that act, and what kind of chilling effect that will have on press freedom, not just in the United States, but globally.
And Dr. Shortis, very quickly as well, you mentioned at the outset that Julian Assange is an Australian citizen. I want to ask you about your thoughts about, a non-American citizen being charged under the Espionage Act. Is that something that is legal and proper in your view?
I think it was completely inappropriate and should never have been pursued, for a number of reasons. One being that Julian Assange is not an American citizen and had no obligation to maintain protections and secrecy of American documents. And I think also, as I mentioned, that the precedent it would set for the United States to be able to pursue non-citizens and particularly journalists for publishing information, for publishing the truth, would be extraordinarily damaging to press freedom. And I think that's part of the reason that the case has gotten to this point now, because it was really untenable for the US Department of Justice to be pursuing a journalist in this way, from the biggest and most important democracy in the world. That was irreconcilable, I think, with the values or the stated values of the United States. And that's why this case, I think, is coming to a close.
All right, Dr. Shortis, we do have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on the show. Dr. Emma Shortis is Senior Researcher for International and Security Affairs at the Australian Institute. She was talking to us live from Melbourne.